Hey, welcome to the Gig Life Podcast. I'm your host, Stevie Taylor. My guest today is bass player Phil Stack. Phil is a multi-instrumentalist, really. He plays piano and guitar, but mostly known for his bass playing, having played in James Morrison's band for many years. But in the early 2000s, Phil and some buddies formed the band Thirsty Merc, which is still going strong today. But he also has his own solo music. He has a couple of albums out, an EP, and his latest album he released very recently, and it's bloody good, eh? I love it. Anyway, let's hear from the man. This is episode 135, Phil Stack. Here we go. I think we're rolling. Hey, Phil Stack.
Hey, Steve, how you going?
Good, man. Self?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me in your studio. It's awesome here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is this where you record most of your solo stuff?
The last album I did, songs from a hill.
Yep. Is this the hill?
This is the hill.
Right.
Was mostly, I think, almost entirely done here, actually.
Yep.
Yeah, whereas the first album was a little bit here, but mostly in a few different studios in Sydney at Free Energy Device in Camperdown. Did some mixing at Sean Carey's place in Church Street. But yeah, this last one I just did was mostly here, was sort of born out of that necessity of that lockdown that happened about this time last year.
Yep.
And, kind of, well, I've got the time here, I'm here. Got some microphones, I've got stuff, and things sort of evolved from there.
And so there was yourself playing. You played drums on it too, didn't you?
I played a lot of drums.
You played a lot of drums on it, and then Evan Manel played drums.
Evan played some drums on it too.
And
Ben Vanderwall played drums on one track.
Right. So did those two guys both play on this kit as
well? So no, Evan sent some things remotely.
Because he's a lefty.
He's a lefty.
Yeah.
I mean, they're actually Evan's drums.
Okay. Yep.
Evan's always been very generous with kits for me, so that's a hodgepodge of some of my gear and Evan's shells, old Luddies.
Yep.
And the session with Ben Vanderwall was, as I said, that lockdown happened last year, and Thirsty Merc were kind of on a bit of a band on the run trip where we were out of Sydney when all that lockdown happened,
right?
And we had to.
Were you running away from?
Well, we were out of town when it hit.
Okay.
And then we had these dates in Perth where Ben Vanderwall lives, and we had like a month till these dates were on, and if we went back to Sydney, then we wouldn't have been able to go to Perth. Yeah. So we did this weird manoeuvre where we went up to Queensland and picked up a few shows up there, and then we had to go to the only state we could go to Perth from was Tasmania, because that was a low risk state.
Yeah.
By the way, I hate talking about this COVID stuff now, but I'm doing it.
Well, this is
it's getting to the.
This is not depressing. This is quite fun. It's fun to talk about this,
especially in retrospect.
Yeah.
It was like, well, we have to spend 2 weeks in a low risk state, which was Tasmania, in order to go to WA to do our gigs there and fulfil the 10, 8 or 9 gigs we had. And so we thought, well, we can do this. So let's string together a few, rather than just go and booking a hotel in Tasmania and obviously incurring more expense. We thought we can hook up some gigs. So we hooked up a gig with like a week or two notice, hooked up some shows, and it ended up being really fun. The people down there were really hungry for it. Anyway, we did 2 weeks there, or 14 days, and when we were able to go to WA, and then it was still locked down here, so I spent a few extra days there, and in those few days I thought, I've got one of the great drummers down here, and I've got a friend's studio is very generous, and who records Ben all the time, and I thought, I'll just do something. So I just written this new song, so I got Ben to play on that. It was a bit of a jazz kind of 3/4 thing, which is definitely beyond my capabilities as a drummer. So it was like, he's the perfect guy. Then I came back here and sort of finished that, and that was one of the last songs I put on, Songs from a Hill, that I put out this year.
And I said to you earlier, and I even texted you during the week, that last song.
That's with Ben on it,
yeah, right. That literally made me cry first time I heard
wow.
that. Yeah,
No one said that. Thank you.
Especially towards the end, it just gets really, really ambient. There's a lot of voice in there, and I'm getting goosebumps now talking about it.
Yeah.
And I was listening to it in the car on the way out here as well. Just you've done so well with that album.
You.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
And we're also just talking to it's a shame it's not out there more, because it really is. It's top notch.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. I'm not just saying it. You know, I think it's bloody good.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you saying that. It's and yeah, as you said, yeah, it. Look, you know, it would be nice if more people know about this stuff. Of course, I'm not going to be idealistic and go, oh, it doesn't matter at all. Like, but look, but in the grand scheme of my being, it's okay. It's not my job to sort of, you know, make people be aware. I like it as such, but I probably struggle a bit to make people more aware of it. You know, that this kind of music is there, because I guess I'm known as, I don't know, to various people as different things, like a jazz musician for hire, a guy on electric bass who sings backing vocals in Thirsty Merc. You know, to some people, probably to lesser people, a songwriter. You know. But in actual fact, that's the thing I spend all my time doing and thinking about, is that. Yeah. Really, you know. So, you know, but I do it for me, because it's just complete cathartic experience. As you were saying with that, like that track, it's like, it's just, I don't think about who's going to buy it. I don't think about what audience it's going to have, or a demographic, or whatever. It's just whatever comes out, goes on the record, and then it helps me. And then if people like it, I'm like, that's great. I really love that. It's not like I don't want people to like it, you know.
Of course. So that's your second album, and then you've done an EP too, and then you've released singles off that.
I did an EP in 2015. That was the first foray into my solo music. I'd had a band before that called House of Orange with Evan and Cameron Dale, which was like a prog 3-piece band. I was playing that Gibson electric bass up there, Gibson EB2 1968, which was a real thunderous instrument, and it was a proggy sort of 3-piece thing. But when I sort of gravitated, you know, and that was, all those guys are so busy, you know, so we sort of just stopped playing, even though we're together for about 10 years. And then I just gravitated to writing more piano-based music, and then that sort of became, you know, noticeably a solo outlet. It just became more orchestrated like that, as opposed to complete rock, I guess, like that House of Orange was. Yeah.
Having listened to that EP and the 2 albums over the last couple of weeks, you know, since we booked this, from what you're saying there, you can hear in that EP that it is a lot more piano based, and then your second album, I guess, a little bit more not progressive in regards to progressive rock, but adding other elements. But this new one, Up on a Hill, like every track's different.
Yeah,
it's got a different, you know, different sort of feel, and not just piano bass, but you know, you can hit the basses. But it's I think it's more so your voice as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I'm getting better as a singer as time goes on, you know, more confident and exploring what that's like for me, you know. It's been a strange journey with becoming a solo artist, obviously while still keeping all my band things going on and freelance work. But it's been a sort of uncovering, you know, my confidence with it is what it is, you know, because it's not like writing songs is new to me. It's not like, I started writing songs in 2015. That's why it's, you know, that's my first album. It's like, no, I've been writing for like, now it's probably 34 years since 1988 is when I first formed my first band. Right. And, and then writing for other people a bit, and writing a bit in Thirsty Merc, and writing lots of stuff at home for me, but just never putting it out because of this, you know, weird, I don't know, just getting busy with other parts in life, thinking that no one will like what I do, it's not ready, all this stuff that all this negative self-talk musicians go through. Some do.
Yep.
And then eventually going, well, two things. I was getting better as a song. I'm getting better as a songwriter. So 2015, I did feel I was ready to put some worthy things out, but also just going, oh, bugger it, kind of thing. It's like, well, bugger all that shit that stopped me doing this for 15 years, which is really what it had done, from putting things out. And yeah, it's just the journey it's taken me on, yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, can we roll right back to the beginning now? How it all sort of came about. You're from Dubbo originally? Yeah. When did music start? Was music around in Dubbo? Do you have a musical family?
Yeah. Well, my dad is a wonderful bass baritone sort of singer. He was not professionally; he's a maths teacher by trade, but he was in amateur musicals and loved sort of all that Gilbert and Sullivan kind of thing, and he actually also taught me keys on the piano, like from a mathematical point of view, like, with one flat it's like this, and you go up a fourth, and you add two flats it's B flat, and then up another one, and then it's three flats is E flat, and sort of I guess now what I know is the circle of fifths, but he didn't talk about it like that. He kind of mathematically said these are the flats, and looking back, it's really helpful,
That's interesting.
And he could sight sing without kind of reading music himself in a way, just from intervals kind of thing.
Wow.
So, and my mum sort of plays church kind of piano, not professional level, but just, music was always, it was always around in the house, but I wouldn't say like my parents are those kind of parents who was like, oh yeah, my parents are into the Beatles and Led Zeppelin. They're not those kind of parents. They were into 2-1 brass and like, I remember my mum had a Cliff Richard record and, stuff like that.
My mum had Cliff Richards. And what's his name? Gene Pitney.
Yeah, right. All that stuff. I don't think my mum was that hip either. But I sort of found the music of the Beatles when I was about 10 years old. And I went to my auntie's house and she had the records and I taped them onto cassettes, and that's really where my love of music, as like, I want to, what's this, teaching myself piano and working it out and all that kind of, that's when that really started.
What was the first Beatles album?
Well, they were like a Beatles box set, so they weren't even the records. They were all the songs in different orders.
Okay.
But the first CD I bought was Abbey Road. So I liked the later stuff first, and then I went back and, I love it all now.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, see, for me with the Beatles, it was the rock and roll stuff because my dad was playing stuff in bands.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and then the more experimental stuff came later.
Yeah,
because mum and dad didn't have that stuff.
Right.
I found that Beatles stuff elsewhere,
Yeah.
So was it always bass to start with?
No, it was guitar. I was playing guitar.
Yep.
And teaching myself piano, as I said, and then I was playing like clarinet in the school band and playing a bit of drums and around the place, and then it was kind of like, okay, we're going to start a rock band. One of us needs to play bass, kind of thing.
Okay.
And I'd had a dream about playing the bass. I can't remember the dream specifically, but it was something around that time, and I went and I had this sort of thing that's what I was going to do, and it sort of made sense because I don't have massive fat fingers, but they're not dainty as well, and it just kind of worked, and and I sort of and I wasn't really attached to the guitar as such. It was more functional, as it is now, and the electric bass, was a natural thing from there. And I took up the double bass later on, and that's really become my love, whereas the electric bass is kind of functional for me now in a sense, you know what I mean?
Right. I was going to ask you this later, but you've answered that question. But was it the double bass? Did you start playing jazz first and then transition to electric bass?
No,
the other way around.
Yeah.
So I've never been to Dubbo, and I'm not aware of what the music scene is like now or what it was like back then. So what sort of avenues besides sort of school band stuff? The venues that you often played? What's the scene?
The school. Like? I mean, like anyone in high school, the school band was a strong thing, and we had a strong program. We had strong teachers. But what really happened for me was I started to get into jazz music, and there was a sort of a scene of local trad musicians. One of them was a doctor, a GP. One of them was a music teacher from another school, and then a drummer around town. And they were like Benny Goodman quartet kind of trad guys, And I was, playing electric bass, obviously, in my sort of rock band. And I guess I was about 14, 15. And, these guys were largely self-taught musicians with great ears who playing trad jazz, who loved going to these local festivals. So like the Forbes Jazz Festival, the Parks Jazz Festival, Newcastle, any of these kind of country jazz festivals which specialise, in trad jazz mostly. And yeah, I remember our pianist is a GP, and he would sort of grab me by the scruff of the neck, almost kind of like, okay, come on. Like, so I'd go, he'd be like, my mum would take me to the doctor for something, and he'd be like, great, okay, so take, maybe I've got the flu or something, and take these antibiotics. Okay, great. Now, the Forbes Jazz Festival is like, and you're going to come with us. Like, it turned into that because he's a great doctor, but he was way more obsessed with music. So he'd like go home at lunchtime in his lunch break, just scoff some food and like play for an hour. Yeah, and I'd go around there and he couldn't, I don't really know if he could read music or not, but it was almost like he would just be throwing me in the deep end. He was like, okay, start playing. What's this one? Is this in C minor, I guess? Yeah, anyway, you'll be right. Here we go, 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of thing. It was like, and I just had to go, kind of just had to manage. And looking back, that was a really strong foundation for jazz and improvisation and in my ears, to be able to just, because he didn't, I was probably... maybe knew more about harmony as it was, but he was playing, and he was playing by ear, and so that was really valuable and a great start to that.
Were you reading at this stage? Were you learning to read at school?
I was reading. Yeah, that's what I mean. I was probably having some formal training, but I didn't really know about jazz and how things are put together. So that trad jazz from those guys that played by ear, that was valuable, yeah. Yeah.
So when did it progress outside of, when did your learning progress from outside of school and outside of these guys to that different level? Yeah, so I was playing jazz, I was playing in the rock band. We were like a Triple J Unearthed band when I was in year 10, one of the first Unearthed bands, like in the same album as Grinspoon. Yeah, right. Yeah, so that was like, there's a CD round somewhere, you'll find it at a junk shop probably, Unearthed 1, and there's got our band called Drown on it, and there's Grinspoon and a few other things. Oh, cool. And that's in the early 90s sometime, their very first Unearthed. And so we were doing that, and then I was into jazz equally, like it hasn't changed, but that's the thing. I thought at one stage, I'd specialise by age 30. Anyway, that hasn't happened, but that's jumping forward. But So I was there, and I was like, well, I'm just going to do music now. And I stopped doing any work at school. Up until then, I'd at least turn up because my dad's a maths teacher there. I'd sort of have to turn up, and I remember my dad sort of coming to me and going, you're not going to do any work, are you? You're just going to do this music. And I'm like, yeah, to be honest, I am. And that's exactly what I did. And we, the only thing to do the obvious thing was to go to Sydney. And sorry, was your dad okay? Did he kind of did he like get that?
Yeah, he got it. I'm sure he'd rather me study harder, but he's smart enough to understand I wasn't going to, and I was eggs in one basket. I was like, it wasn't like I didn't have this confidence. It was blind faith, really. It was like I don't know what else to do. I can only do music. Yeah, that's it. It's chosen me, and I guess I'll try and study at the con next year or something. It was like that, you know. But I didn't have any, great, confidence in to know that it was going to work out. It was just like I didn't know what else to do, and it didn't seem any obvious thing. So I was quite relaxed about it. It was like, okay, I'll go and do the jazz course because I love jazz, and I just started playing the double bass. This is in my last year of school. We'd rescued a double bass from a storeroom in another school, and it sat there for like 6 months because I didn't really know how to play it. I didn't really know the technique, and I found this great classical teacher called Sam Harvey. She gave me some lessons, and then I really got into it, just stuck into it to make up for lost time, and came down to Sydney and had a lesson off Craig Scott, who's the bass teacher at the con, still there, and he sort of said, you'll probably get in. You've got some work to do, but go and buy these records. Don't pay me for the lesson. Take that money, go down to Ashwoods and these secondhand record stores in Pitt Street. Buy a Ray Brown record, buy a Ron Carter record, like on vinyl, these old vinyl stores. And I'll see you at the audition at the end of the year. And so I just went, okay. So I work really hard. So instead of studying, I was just playing. I was still recording music on my 4-track, like for rock music. So I was doing it all still, And then I got into the con in Sydney, and I moved like straight away after the HSC. I got out of there and came down to Sydney, and Sydney's been home ever since. Yeah.
So what was the audition like? What did you have to? Did you know before the audition what you were going to
not really
be asked to play?
I don't think so.
Or did they just say it's kind of going to be like this?
I can't remember.
Okay.
I can't remember if I knew or like I said, I just studied up on jazz as much as I could, and you know what it's like when you first start an instrument. There's massive acceleration in the first year or two, and that's what it was like. Even though I've been playing electric bass for a bunch of years, I hadn't really got into soloing in jazz and stuff really. But the double bass just really spoke to me. It's such a whole body experience and vibration, and it was just, And at the time I was like, it's the only bass for jazz. It's got to be that, and that's why I got into it. The audition, I think I played with Mike Knock there, probably some sight reading. Probably had to play a blues. I think I had to play maybe a transcription, or maybe not. Maybe it was just a lead sheet of a couple standards, and I don't know how hot I was, but I was definitely already swinging in bands before that for a couple of years, with those old guys. Well, they seem really old. They're probably only 35. Probably 40. It seems old then. Yeah. But, so, and I got in and then, that just didn't look back.
While you were going through the con, were you playing in bands out gigging, and was it jazz stuff or rock stuff, or was it a combination of both?
So I kept my rock band together from school.
Okay. Did they move to Sydney?
Yeah. Our drummer is a surveyor, so he came down and he was studying surveying. We kept the band going. We'd gone between a 3-piece, so I was singing in that band sometimes, and then we got a singer back. He'd gone and studied down in Sydney as well, and he came back into the fold. But we weren't really doing a lot, we didn't really know how to. It's kind of funny because it's like I don't really know how to put a record out now, but I certainly didn't know then. Like a band from Dubbo coming down, the Unearth thing had kind of dried up. We'd done a few things for Triple J in the later school, and we were just kind of lost souls. But we got a house together a period of time, and we did that. All the while, I'm playing jazz around the place to support myself as a professional musician as such. So I kept them both going, even though the rock, I didn't make any money through the rock. It was I got involved in the jazz scene pretty quickly when I was 18 in my first year at the con, and in the second year of the con, I met James Morrison and started working in his band. So I was touring a lot with him over those next bunch of years. But keeping the rock band going, you know.
Yeah, that's cool.
Even though, like I said, it wasn't making any money, but and it wasn't a rock band playing covers. It was just original music. So we just go and do the odd shitty gig somewhere, you know.
Yeah, gotcha. Can I just ask you the transitioning between playing double bass and then playing electric bass? Did that have any sort of negative impact on your hands and your wrists, or did it just become a muscle memory thing to be able to bounce between the two?
Well, as far as a negative impact on my physicality, I mean, I've paid the price now with back things and hand issues. So as far as the double bass itself, yeah, there is a whole physical thing with it that you need to take care of yourself and you need to work on relaxing. And I had to change my technique early on with, you know, how tense I was. And I'm still a very animated player, but I used to be a lot more tense with it.
Did somebody pick that out?
Yeah. I remember Craig Scott was great for me at the con. I owe him a lot. He was really encouraging and fostering, and he was really good at also letting you play the way you are going to play, and you know, not just play the way I do kind of thing. He was like, he could see the way people were developing, and he would really foster that. And along the way, I'd get I'm sure hints from lots of other players as well about technique and. But as far as going from electric bass to double bass, it's all about that left hand technique. You know, you use different fingering with the left hand on the or both the left and the right hand on the double bass that you do with the electric. Now it's like it's still different in the sense of if I don't play the double bass, if I'm playing electric bass on tour with Thirsty Merc, for example, and not taking the double, it's like I haven't played it at all.
Yeah, right.
You know, it doesn't really keep me in.
I've heard that.
It doesn't really keep me in check at all. I mean, you know, maybe a tiny bit, but not much. Yeah.
What was I just about to say? Some guys that play electric bass and double bass, they tend to play their electric bass. Well, this is audio, so you can't sort of see me, but that's sort of
vertical,
almost vertical to be sort of similar, but you don't. You almost play your bass parallel, don't you?
Well, I think because I came from the guitar and the rock and rock and blues, probably, and I mean the guys who played vertical, I don't see that a lot now, but I know it transitioned in the late 50s, early 60s when people were playing double bass, and that's how they played then. Yeah, you know, the new electric bass players who were double bass players, like guys like James Jemison. You see him play with that sort of vertical kind of thing. No, I generally don't. I guess on the electric, I guess I play it like an electric player in a sense. But my left hand's probably more like a double bass on the neck of an electric than like the Jarko 4-fingered approach. That's just the way I've gravitated to.
So what do you mean by that then? Moving around? I understand the whole Jarko thing, but...
Yeah, so Jarko's left hand would be 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
And double bass is more 1, 2, 4.
Ah, gotcha.
Skip 3 as much. So I probably do that more than I probably need to on the electric bass. Okay. But that's pretty common, you know. It's right. There's a certain strength with that too. It's just different. Yeah. I mean, I can do it the other way if I have to. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, back to the James Morrison thing. So how did that come about that you're playing with James? So he obviously would have seen you play and invited you?
No, it was I was part of the Generations in Jazz thing that happens every year in Mount Gambier, which is a really large school stage band where 5,000 kids descend on Mount Gambier and have a festival, and it's an amazing event. It's been going for like 30 odd years. And I was, and one of the things they do there is have you send in an audition tape for young musicians up to the age of 19, I think it is. And 6 finalists go there and they perform, play a song with the house band, and James picks a winner. And then you get, you know, there was a scholarship, $10,000 worth of stuff, and you make a record kind of thing. And I won that that year, my second year of the con, and so I was 19, maybe I was still 18, I can't remember, and 18, 19, and and I a few weeks later, or a few months later, James was looking for a bass player for his band, just by coincidence, and he rang me up and said, "You want to come and play for these gigs?" And then we just kept playing together. That's sort of how it happened. I guess that was fortuitous that he needed someone around that time.
And you played with him for a good 6-7 years, is that right?
25 years.
I don't know where
still going. Well, still, I mean, we still play together.
Yeah.
But I was his full-time bass player for until his son Harry.
Yeah.
Recently, probably, sometime around 2016, I guess he was. So I would teach Harry at the academy, at James's Jazz Academy, knowing full well I'm grooming him for the gig.
Yeah, of course.
But I knew that earlier. When he was 13, he came over for a lesson, so he must be 23 now. So 10 years ago, something like that. And James is like, "Can you show him some stuff?" I'm like,
"Yeah,
sure, okay." So he comes over, and he was already playing great because he's like James. He just sort of, can sort of watch people do things and be able to do it. He's very natural, and he's got that real bass player's aesthetic where he doesn't overanalyze anything and overcomplicate it. He can just kind of groove and do it. And he's James's son, and James swings on any instrument. So Harry's got that. And so I remember thinking that even saying to James, he's not going to doesn't need much help, mate. He's just going to be be great, Yep. And So and James is obviously, it makes sense that he plays with him as his other son does. I mean, I hadn't done the gig full time for the last 10 years. For the last 10 years before that, I guess from 2005 to 2015 anyway, because of Thirsty Merc. So I'd said that to James when the Merc started to do a lot of gigs early on and get some success. I said, "Look, I'm going to prioritize this now, just to let you know. So if you want to get someone else," he said, "No, I want you to still do it when you can." So that was good. So I feel like with James, it's a lifelong thing. I did a few gigs in the last few months with him anyway, and we're sort of good friends, and so there's always stuff going on. Yeah.
One of the questions I asked James when he was on the podcast, it was about his kids, and I said to him, "What did you were you like at your kids to learn their instruments?" And he said, "No, didn't touch it. He waited for them to come to him, and then he would say, 'Well, are you really ready?' And if they said, 'Nah, probably not,' well, I don't want to know, And he just, which is really good. I mean, I just had it in my head that someone of that world class, to sort of bring the kids up, you'd sort of start them early and that kind of thing, but it was so the opposite of that.
Yeah, well,
and look at how well they play now.
Yes, right, exactly.
You got to find it yourself, don't you?
Well, yeah, I guess he's thinking about how he found it. I know he was made to go to piano lessons, but apart from that, as far as being a jazz musician, that was him wanting to do it and him finding out and him doing it by practice, by being there and by going and doing gigs with people, and which is the best thing for a jazz musician. So I'm sure he thought back to his own experience and thought what worked. Oh well, certainly not shoving it down their throats and making them do it. Yeah. So I mean, I think music should be like that anyway. It's probably a healthy marriage of the things of that, but also when kids are young, you do have to kind of, to a certain extent, go, well, if we're going to pay for lessons, then you've got to do some practice, I mean,
exactly.
But when I had some piano lessons as a kid, and my heart wasn't really in that type of thing, reading the music and doing that. So I would sort of look at the book on the way in the car. I remember it was a 15-minute trip to, my mum would drive me to Wongarvan, which is 15 minutes, and I'd sort of try and imagine playing in my head because I just hadn't practiced. But it is. But that doesn't mean I wasn't passionate about music. I just wasn't passionate about that so much. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think's been the biggest takeaway for you having worked with James? What's the biggest lesson, I reckon?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so many things. Early on, I remember it was like, everything must groove. Groove is everything, and everything must groove. It wasn't like a thing that was said, but I remember playing like a corporate gig somewhere sometime, and he gave me like a bass solo, and I was probably obviously maybe I was into Eddie Gomez at the time, who's like a real, upper register kind of. Not that he grooves, but it's like that's not the main thing about his playing. It's a virtuistic kind of thing. I was probably trying to do a bit of that too much during this corporate kind of groovy gig, and I remember him saying, "Hey, when I give you a solo like that, you just got to, lay it down," kind of thing. Still, and I remember that and taking that into every musical situation. I guess that things have got to groove all the whole time. They've got to feel good if you're going to play. And so, that's one. And, I mean, just so many other little, on the bandstand kind of a feeling thing to create a, an experience so that you bring the audience in with, which obviously James is a master at. And, lots of things.
Did you would have got to play with David Jones?
Yeah,
at some stage. Last night, I went and saw him perform at the Seymour Centre.
Oh, right.
He did his solo soundscape performance.
I was going to watch Midnight Oil, otherwise.
I know. That was the next biggest ticket in town. Yeah. So, what I took away from, because I've also had David on the podcast.
Oh, he's wonderful.
But hadn't actually seen him play live and that was the first time I saw him play last night. And besides his technical brilliance and his creativity, it's the groove, man. Like he just bopped and moved the whole time.
Yeah,
smiled, moved the shoulders. Like it was phenomenal. Hey? Yeah. So that would have been a real treat. Getting to play with those guys. So,
Smiling assassin.
He's smiling,
someone said, because he plays the drums so amazingly. He's always with this beautiful, peaceful smile. Yeah, Dave's beautiful. And he's such a, I think the best thing about David is probably that solo kind of thing, in a sense of like, here's some drums, make me some music, because he's very spiritually connected and certainly got his own thing going on the instrument, which I think is the most important element. Like if you're going to ask what's the most important element, I reckon is uniqueness. I reckon that's the most important thing.
Yeah. You see a lot of, you were saying before you're not really into the social media thing, but I watch a lot of reels on Instagram and Facebook and they pop up, and I follow a few drummers that, do create sounds, and it's really, really good. But every time I see them, I always see them and go, I bet you David did that first.
Yeah.
Because he was doing that stuff such a long time ago, what I mean?
Well, I guess everything on there has, doesn't mean it's all been done, but
no.
It means it seems like we're seeing it for the first time or something because of the medium. And by the way, when I said I'm not into social media, I just mean I'm not very good at it. I'd like to be more open-minded with,
promo type sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's a necessary evil and all that. I'm certainly not into looking at it because any amount that I look at it makes me feel worse.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. But this one thing David was doing last night, and he had just an SM57 microphone on his table that after he'd do his little... So he probably performed about 10 pieces all up. And then after a couple, he'd get up and he'd talk, and then he'd sit down and he'd do the next thing. But the second or third last piece that he did, he had the microphone and he was using that whole microphone proximity to get bottom end out of his cymbals. Like, whoa.
Oh, what a great thing to do.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
So he'd start spinning the cymbal and then maybe just give it a scratch with a stick and then put the mic on it. And you can hear the top end and then this bottom end just comes in and filled the theatre. It was incredible.
Was it a good turnout?
Oh, could have been better.
In the big theatre upstairs?
Yeah, in that, what's it called? The up the stairs.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, would have been great to see a lot more people.
Of course, yeah.
But Yeah, I didn't know about it till quite late on. So if I'd known, maybe I would have, you know. But everyone was at Midnight Oil, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing to. It was a hard thing to.
Well, what was that? What was that like? It was almost 4 hours worth of. I was reading a review.
Believe how
I was
long
reading
that-
a review today about.
Yeah, it's favourable.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe how long they played. It was nearly 4 hours of. He's nearly 70. Peter Garrett and yeah,
Oh, what about Rob Hurst? Played for 4 hours.
Oh my God, yeah, I saw him shaking his wrist a couple times.
yeah.
I was like, with that massive backbeat. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Just realised how prog punk they are.
Yeah.
It's punk, you know.
Yeah, man.
No, make no mistake.
Yeah.
It's absolute like proggy punk. A lot of it. Some really interesting sort of chord movements as well, and obviously, you know, the lyrical whole thing, the passion and everything. But yeah, I was blown away. It was really good. I mean, you know, probably didn't need to be quite that long, but it was like they certainly had me for 3 hours 30.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. When I read that, I thought, wow, that's.
But it made sense. It was like,
of course,
it was still the right thing to do in the circumstances. Like, is that going to be their last gig, or you know? So everyone, you know, not many people left. They were there. I was like, you almost couldn't leave. It's like, and plus they hadn't played a couple of the massive songs. You know, I'm like, oh, that's right. They haven't played Power and the Passion yet. Stuff like that.
Yeah. I was reading just before I came here. Actually, I was reading a review by Glenn A. Baker, and he was at the show last night, and he was talking about Adam Ventura.
Oh yeah,
and he said that when Adam, joined the band, they threw 96 songs at him.
Yeah.
To learn in a short period of time.
Wow.
And he played 44 of them last night or something like that.
Did
whatever.
they play that many? Far out. Yeah, he did great.
Yeah.
It's great to see him. He's my old neighbour. We used to live in the same street in Merrickville. And two bass players on that street, and it was it was heartwarming to see him do so well and bring the power to that. It's completed it so well.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Thirsty Merc now and how that came about. So what were you doing? Did you meet Ray at the con?
Yeah, he was not at the con per se. He used to come to my gigs at Soup Plus when I was playing with like Emma Pask and things like that. He was a few years younger. He's 2 years younger. So we met at a mutual, when I was at the con, I went to his house for a rehearsal because a mutual drummer friend of ours was like, do you want to, we need a bass player for this band. I'm playing with this young guy. He's like a whiz on the keyboard kind of thing. And come and play with us. I'm like, sure, or whatever, come play. So I get there and there's this kid like in his school uniform kind of thing, like he's in year 10 and playing like the shit out of the keyboard, like absolutely burning. I was like, wow, okay. And not singing at that time. And I couldn't play. I was busy. I mean, I was a busy working musician. I couldn't join another band that wasn't doing gigs, so I was like, I sort of left them to it. But Ray and I struck up a friendship, and we started hanging out. And then, then he had a Sony deal in the States,
a solo
thing. Okay. It didn't kind of work out. Went for like a year. He got an advance. He was going back and forth a bit. He came back and was like, he was always hanging around our house, and we had our band, our rock band, And Thirsty Merc was actually born, not many people know, but it was actually born out of the three guys from Dubbo and Ray singing. Mm-hmm. That's sort of how that started. And we were playing gigs around town, Ray and I, as a jazz groove kind of a trio. Ray started singing, and I was playing bass, and Nick McBride was playing drums, a great drummer, Warren Trout sometimes. And and then he sort of was wanting to, because he'd had that deal over there that was kind of a bit more pop, Justin Timberlakey before Justin Timberlakey kind of thing. He wanted to play guitar and be in a rock band kind of thing. So he could see I had a rock band, and loved that, and it was sort of already going. We had a great drummer and lead guitarist, so he came and played rhythm guitar and sang, And so, we kind of put it together, and we'd almost had the same idea in the same week. I'm like, our singer's sort of joined the police force now, and he's not really coming around and play. why don't you come around and sing with us? And he's like, I need a band to try these songs out, you know.
Yep.
And that's how it kind of happened. And that was 2001 or 2. And, yeah.
The songs that he brought in initially, was that part of the stuff that he had with the Sony thing that didn't work out? Or did Sony, whatever he'd done with them, that was theirs?
That was that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
No, new stuff.
Yep.
New stuff. And initially we were playing our 90s kind of grungy kind of material as part of the sets as well, you know what I mean? And then it very quickly became, you know, a streamlined kind of thing with the kind of 60s rockin' kind of things, like songs like Wasting Time and that kind of, and Emancipate Myself and those kind of rock guitar-based, 2 guitar-based kind of things. They were the first batch of songs, yeah.
So when did they start getting a bit of record company interest? Were they starting to see you doing stuff around?
We sort of got a little following up, you know. We 150 people, and we go and do gigs in places. And you know, at the time, A&R people would be interested in that. They would be like, "Oh, this guy's got a little following." They've got, you know, because it wasn't like with the internet now, like. It was like live. Oh, okay. And you didn't have to have thousands of people coming already. It was just like a bit of a buzz around town. It's like, you know, just with a few people. And so we'd done that in 6 months or something and, you know, pressed our own CDs and like, you know, gave them out at the gigs and had some friends helping and, you know, and then, a label came, Warner came and I think we got a manager first and then a label came and signed us from that, yeah.
What was that like when the label came along?
It was exciting, yeah.
Something
you know,
guys had always been
early to mid 20s, and
so I figure Ray would have been a little bit wary of.
Well, he had some experience,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, he had some experience with it, so which was invaluable because, he knew what to sort of look for, and he knew that you needed a deal as such too.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know, us Dubbo kids, we were just sort of dicking around playing gigs around at places, not really. Maybe we'd send some stuff to some labels, I don't know, but you know, we didn't have any big pop aspirations either, you know what I mean? I was playing jazz and then just enjoying writing these sort of weird grungy tunes with the band, you know, but Ray knew what he wanted, you know, because he'd already had a taste of it. So he wanted to, you need that triangle, you need an agent, so we got an agent, you need a manager, you need a label kind of thing. So he went, you know, and when I say he, is in, we all, you know, him and me especially really ran that, but he had those ideas and knew what to do. So then I'm like, okay, let's go and do that then. So it was, it's cool.
So once you got that label, was it into the studio to record?
We'd already done an EP on our own bat. Okay. We'd already done it at nights at an ad agency called Songzoo, where Ray had a little room there. He was writing ads and stuff in the day. So we went in there and sort of kind of illegally, kind of like after hours, like, and recorded our EP over a few weeks. And then the label kind of put that out, bought that office, I guess, maybe. And then we quickly went and did a full-length album down in Melbourne.
So what was that? What was some of the tracks off that
first album? Had Wasting Time again on it. In the summertime. Someday.
Yeah, that one.
A song I wrote called Hope. It had I Wish Somebody Would Build a Bridge So I Could Get Over Myself.
Such a great name for a song.
Had a song called Claude Monet.
Yeah.
And a Baby Tell Me I'm the Only One. My Completeness as the album opener. Yeah.
And how long did it take from when you released that till it really started to hit?
Well, we kind of had put a couple singles out. My Completeness was one of them, which is pretty prog rocky, and something else. And then it had sort of seemed like it was, we got some buzz from it, and we had Triple J following a bit, and then it was going to be like, okay, we'll wrap it up now. The label kind of like, we'll wrap it up now, and then you can start working on the next album and all that. And then we put Someday out, and then that blew it wide open.
Yeah.
And then we got like another year of touring out of it or something, something like that. That nearly didn't make the album because we thought that was too pop. We were like, indie kids kind of thing, you know. and I think the record company made us put it on the album, something like that. Yeah.
Right. Well, so with that then, if it wasn't something that was going to go on the album and you weren't thinking about it because that song hit, did you start writing songs similar to that, hoping to get that hit again, or did you kind of stick to your...
No, I think this second album, Slideshows, was more kind of classic rock anyway.
Yep.
It's, you know, like we called it was the breakup album, you know, like it had relationships and there's more breakup songs on it. It's kind of a common thing. It's the difficult second album, but where, you're being watched by the record company and you've got to make sure you have some hits on it kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's probably a better conversation to have with Ray about how he approached that as such. But,
okay.
But we, I remember we struggled. It was like a bit more considered. We have, you know what I mean? Like the first album is like just it's easy in a sense. You just put everything on there and you rock it. You
see what happens.
Yeah, kind of thing. There's nothing to lose. And
yeah.
The second album, you've got a record deal there and you've got some following. And so, yeah, it's more considered and a little bit more careful. And we got a few mixes done in LA and all that. So it's starting to go to classy town, as our recording engineer, our producer, Lindsay Gravina, said. You know, he's a Melbourne grunge guy and he's really indie and he's like, you'll probably go to classy town on your third album, meaning you'll go to LA, which is exactly what we ended up doing on the next album, Mousetrap Park.
Yeah.
Going with Maroon 5's producer, and it was a bit more funky, keyboard based. You know, it was just the way it was going, and which was the last album with the record label. So in around 2010, we had an amicable breakup with a record label.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows the last thing you want when you've got a record deal is a record deal. So so we got off that. It was just not working by then with them. You know, they weren't really getting it. They had change of management, and the record industry was obviously all changing.
Starting to change.
Really change.
Yep.
So we got out of that, and we've been independent ever since, put out a few albums on our own steam,
that's cool.
Which has been the most, you know, in a way, a really enjoyable freedom.
Yeah. What was it like recording in the big studios over there?
It's great. We did the third album at Sound City.
Wow, right.
I think we're one of the last bands to record on that famous Neve desk that now is Dave Grohl's board,
That's
is in their studio.
Oh, wow.
I think it was the only Neve of that time that had never been moved or something. So it's like the only one that's been there since the 70s was like Fleetwood Mac and, you know, Rumours was recorded on them and Nevermind was recorded on it, heaps of other stuff. And it was great. I'll tell you, it was, like I said, it was the Classy Town album where you go to do it with the LA producer and all that, who was awesome. And we did these rhythm tracks and it sounded really good. And you know, so to keep costs down, I came back to Australia after we'd done overdubs and before, you know, after I'd done extra bass tracks and all that, I came back and I was getting back these rough mixes of things and, you know, it's like, what? The drums have been all Pro Tooled and shit, you know, which for people who don't know what that is, that's like being straightened out where, you know, the swing and swagger is taken out in favour of rigid mechanical computer music, which is great if that's the music you're making. It's very necessary. But if you're a rock band and you work on the swagger and the swing, and then, you know, like Ben Folds says, some producer with computers fixes all my shitty tracks. But in this case, it wasn't needed, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had numerous arguments with a producer over that very thing. But was he right? I don't know. It certainly wasn't. It wasn't as an enjoyable experience because it was way more ironed out. You know, the thing is, when you record music, I think you've got to overcompensate on the beginning and. As opposed, like vibe over precision every time is better.
Yep.
Because it will get straightened. It will, even if you don't Pro Tool it, every process from, you know, writing, pre-production, rehearsing, basic tracking, overdubs, mixing, editing, mastering, all these, every one of those processes make it slicker.
Yeah.
So if you haven't got much vibe in it in the beginning, it's going to be completely ironed out by the end.
Yeah.
So, that was my most valuable lesson since then, and I still aspire to that today, even though more music is Pro Tooled and straightened out now. If you're making feel music, it's supposed to be about that. It's you got to go vibe over precision every time.
Yeah, well, your music certainly has the vibe.
Yeah, right.
For sure.
Thanks.
No worries. So that with that producer having started to do that to your album, was that the catalyst to try and end that relationship with the?
No. That it's just the way it was.
Okay.
We like I said, it was sort of the writing was on the wall at the record label, and we ended up getting out of that deal, and that was the best thing.
Yep.
And I think we had a bit of a break around that time. We've had numerous little breaks in the band, and and some of those times I thought were going to be the end of the band as well. But it's like a marriage. Once you get over like some of the dumb stuff and getting on with each other and getting over different personality things and what other people want to do separately, and then be able to just have the band and appreciate the band as its own thing.
Yep.
and sort of value it, especially as the time goes on, it starts to become more nostalgia rock and all that. I think once we've been getting to that point in the last few years, once you get over that point, it's like, well, we'll just keep it together, and we'll do it sometimes and we won't do it other times, and that's okay, as opposed to like, oh, is this going to be the last time? It's just like, whatever. It's like kind of, it's like, I think that's probably like being in a relationship for a long, long time,
Not getting into details of it, but I mean, there was that car accident years ago. How difficult was that to keep going?
Yeah. Well, that was one of those times where it was, what are we going to do now, and all that. We were obviously on tour at the time, and we obviously we lost a crew member, unfortunately, and tragically. And Mick's, our drummers, his life was, in the balance for quite a while, really. And then, over time, gradually got better. We gave him the space he needed, but after the initial obviously shock of that, we felt we had his blessing to continue on with the tour with some other guys, and Mick's still our first call drummer now. But we've out of that was born some other great relationships as drummers. Pete Drummond, who's a wonderful drummer, Tim Firth, obviously. They all came, and and that's also that camaraderie of musicians, going around, respectfully, kind of like, yeah, I'll come and do the gig, but we know it's Mick's gig, and we can't wait to see him get better. And they were both those guys are very respectful of Mick. They know it's his gig, and so there was huge. We had a huge concert at the Enmore at the time that was raising money for that very cause at the time. Mick and also Shane's partner. So yeah, I mean, we were overwhelmed. I was shocked at the love and support we had around the band at that time. I remember having a call from like Barnsey at the time. Like the day after, 2 days after. I didn't really know Barnsey, but just having a message on I wasn't even answering the phone because it was just so devastating. But just getting a message from him saying, just the Barnes, if you need anything, and I don't think no one knows this, but I remember at the time, even later on, gear having to get freighted back, and there was obviously a lot of things going on, and I'm pretty sure him or someone around him paid for all this stuff to get moved and didn't say anything. Just made it happen, and so there was a lot of support around that time, and the band, I guess in some ways there's some closeness going on with us too, which was needed.
Cool, man. So what's happening now? What I mean, you've released your album, and that was a couple of months ago. That came out? Yep.
Yeah, June.
Yep. So, and I've seen you've done a couple of shows with that. So, is there plans to play more shows?
Yeah, I think the next few things I'll probably do, I need to book some solo shows as such. I'd love to do more with the band. It's expensive and it's and everyone's busy, and I want to make sure they get paid because it's difficult music. They need to learn it. Even a really good jazz musician, it's kind of I'm pretty. It needs to be a certain way. It's not just sort of groove music or free music or improvised music. There's bits of elements in there of that. But it's, I want it to be sort of like the recordings and parts and all that. So, I want to pay them properly and everything. So I wish I could do more is what I'm saying. And I should do more, but the next few things I'll probably do is it really worked with just the piano and vocals. So I want to do some stuff with a real piano, although it's hard to find a small venue that's got a real piano that I don't have to worry about selling millions of tickets to, So that's the next thing to think about, is to do a few things like that. I just came back from the weekend and did a thing for mental health, which is a subject I'm very passionate about, and it was in Mount Gambier called Close to Home Festival for local suicide prevention charities, and I played solo there, and because Mount Gambier's obviously got a long-standing connection. I've gone back to Generation Jazz many years since 1997, and so it was great to spend the weekend there and play with some other musicians, and cool.
Just on the whole mental health thing. I mean, I've suffered an anxiety disorder most of my life, so something I have to deal with every day. There's something in it every day. What was fairly obvious during COVID. I mean, we said we wouldn't talk much about COVID, but it got pretty bad for a lot of people, and it still is. How do you think? How do I say this? Do you think there's more support now? Is it?
I think in this generation, I think generation as far as firstly, I'm sorry you go through that. I can appreciate it, and I can certainly sympathise. Is not the right word. I can relate to it very much. I think it's a good thing that guys have been encouraged to talk about that stuff way more. And I know that's that's a cliche to say that because it's been talked about a lot, which is good. That's what I'm trying to say. Especially a guy from the country, it was just you don't talk about that. And you don't talk about that to your parents. Even though my parents are loving, beautiful people, I didn't feel I could because it just wasn't part of their vernacular, or our whatever 17-year-olds, and I mean, my experience with that is I got sober a few years ago, about 4.5 years ago.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Well, it's and it's a. I mean, I say thanks just in a sense of like, thanks for saying that, but it's like I didn't do it. It was like it was about asking for help because, your secrets keep you sick, and the idea that I can do this myself and I can pull myself out of this is a very common problem, and it keeps you in the problem.
Absolutely.
That's the thing, and that's certainly like that with sobriety, and that's certainly like that with any mental health, I think. And I'm sure you've got your own experiences with that. With they say the opposite of addiction is connection. The opposite,
Sure.
So I think that probably goes for other forms of mental health, even if substance abuse isn't part of your story. I think the opposite is connection, and it's I mean, obviously in my life it's been a massive thing. Getting sober and in recovery now, and talking about recovery and trying to help other people who are struggling. That's been a massive part of my well-being, and I'm super grateful. And it's it's been everything actually in the last bunch of years, and it's driven a lot of material that I write. It's all over that, whether it be in active addiction and trying to get out of it, or the hope and the hope that might bring, or actually being in recovery and still writing about the noisy head, because that's what it is, and but it's acceptance that it's going to be there, then that's okay, as opposed to like, oh no, I'm still having some of those thoughts. It's like, oh, okay, that makes sense because I'm like this, even if I'm in recovery. Yeah, I'm still got those issues. I might not be drinking or taking drugs, but that's and that's okay. And acceptance is a big part of it. Yeah, but it's I do a lot of stuff from a recovery, and it's I'm really grateful for the people that have helped me, and I try and pass that on.
Oh, good on you, man. That's cool. That's cool. But yeah, it's a day-to-day thing,
isn't it?
Yeah, and the thing with anxiety, I with this particular anxiety disorder, I don't think there's an end to it. It's just about managing it.
Managing it.
Yeah, because it's not going to be over.
That's right.
It's not going to end, but it comes in ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
But I'm aware in my, I'd completely open with my wife about it. She knows, and I tell her if I'm in a certain part of the ebb and flow, and But it I still get out there, man.
Yeah.
And sometimes it becomes. There won't be any anxiety. Thinking, there's no thinking to it. It's just a physical reaction.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing sometimes, because you can talk yourself down as much as you like, but if that physical feeling is there, nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
You can try and go for a run, but then sometimes you have a beer and it goes away. But then that's that slippery slope.
That's the slippery slope. Yeah. Well, that acceptance that it's never fixed as such.
Yeah.
Is that's a big thing though, because when you think, when I get over this, it's going to be like this amazing cloud. It's like it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. But it's better.
Yeah.
It's better by reaching out and asking for help at first.
For sure.
And surrendering to some help.
100%.
And and also having that hope that there might be some way that I can manage this. Because I can see other people who are recovering from this, and so there must be a way, and they seem to be living happy, prosperous lives to a degree, Yeah.
Do you think there's more support post-COVID that you're seeing from maybe some of your musician friends?
I think it sort of brought a lot of it to the fore, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's been talked about more, which is just a good thing. I think it just accelerated some people's condition, because of that isolation is just certainly not the friend of that, of any form of mental health. And I mean, look, I mostly know more about the addiction side of things, but I think they're very related. And I mean, I know some alcoholics and addicts have said it was just anxiety. And then it's actually addiction, and they're kind of entwined, It's,
exactly.
It's a coping mechanism and all that,
Yeah, exactly. So I don't want to end it on that.
That's all right.
Yeah, so who's your favourite bass player? Oh, and I want to ask you about drummers too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, being a, I've heard you play, and you go all right. And you play with some pretty awesome drummers, like you spoke of Mick and Tim and Pete.
Yeah.
And Evan and Ben, and you played with David. And what is it about a drummer for you that, as a bass player, gets you going?
Yeah. If I'm playing jazz with someone, it's about someone who's confidently outlining the form, who's playing the music ahead of the drums. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
There's many guys good at that. Evan Manell's really good at that. He's a great drummer, but he's really a musician who plays drums, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
As are many other guys, Deep Pocket, I mean, Gordo's got like one of the deepest pockets, you know, certain grooves, especially it's like, you know. But I'm so lucky, like you said, I get to play with all those guys. When I'm playing jazz, you know, I'm going to get technical about it. I like a drummer. There's, because I'm kind of up on the beat when I'm playing. I don't want a drummer to be playing up there with me to try and, because then it falls over, kind of thing.
I understand. Yeah.
I want someone just to be just kind of there in the center.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just like I said, just groove before anything else.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. And what about bass players? Who were the bass players that you
that on records? Yeah. Oh, look, one of the first guys I got into was Paul McCartney because, and I got my 24 fret, big wooden, huge through neck electric bass. And I came home from the shop with that and a Paul McCartney book, you know. And I remember I was at my granddad's house and he's like, "Are you playing the noise machine again?" Doesn't even play a tune. It probably must have sounded pretty bad. Yeah. You know, because I was playing bass lines, I guess, so he just didn't sort of understand it. But I was probably also crap, let's be honest. But anyway, James Jamison, John Paul Jones, you know, Stanley Clark and those kind of guys, and Jarko. And then I got into double bass players. You know, Ray Brown was my guy, which is a great, just solid, you know, sort of foundation. Ron Carter, got into Dave Holland, especially all his solo records. I love those. You know, Stanley Clark on double as well. And then, lots of piano players. I love listening to piano players for bass and transcribing piano players and playing them on the bass. Keith Jarrett, guys like that. Yeah. Trumpet players, Wynton Marsalis.
You played with them, didn't you?
I did play with Wynton,
Yeah.
Yeah, I played a gig in Sydney with Gordo and Matt McMahon for it was for an SSO reception thing. We played a 20-minute set. Yeah, it was great. Amazing.
Yeah, cool. So what's the rest of the year? What's in store for the rest of the year? Obviously, the Merc's on a bit of a break.
Yeah, a couple of months.
Ray's over playing with some guitarist called Joe Satriani or something.
Yeah, so he's doing that, and I'm doing some producing in here. I'm just producing a singer called Heaven She. Her name's Jenna McDougall. She was from a band called Tonight Alive, which were, I think, a fairly big rock kind of band in the noughties, or maybe 2010 to 2016 or something. She's doing solo stuff, and I'm producing a couple of tracks for her at the moment.
What kind of music is that?
It's like singer-songwriter indie rock kind of thing. Yep. She's a really good singer, really good. So doing that, I'm doing some jazz with guys around town. It's this. I love my life, you know. I love going and doing the Merc for a few months and doing that, and then it's like it gets a bit okay. That's enough now, and then it's like, oh great, I can come back and I can just do some gigs around town with guys I love. I'm playing with Carl Dewhurst on Wednesday nights at the East Sydney Hotel this month. Tim and Carl, and some other jazz, a couple sessions, and then the Merc will go on the road again in the end of November, December. That'll take us up to New Year's, and there's a few dates next year. And look, let's take each day as it comes. And,
Good on you, man.
I'm pretty lucky, and I love doing. Like I said before, I still love doing rock and jazz and everything in between. You know, it's all the same to me. It's just music.
Good stuff. Well, Phil, it's been an absolute pleasure, man.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this.
Thanks, Steve.
No, thanks for coming on the show, and wish you all the best, and can't wait for the next album.
Yeah, beautiful.
Because I'll be listening to yours. By the way, people, the links are in the show notes to all Phil's music. Do yourself a favour and go check it out because it's really, really good.
Thanks, Steve.
Sweet as.
See
See
you,
you, Phil. Cheers.